Welcome to your weekly ritual known as the Ultimate Hockey Show. My name is Michael Dale. I'm joined by Red Petty. Good afternoon, Red. How are you?
Really good.
Well, you ready for some breaking news? I just got this
Well, I
in
don't
as
know.
we
I'm
were
I'm
starting the
ready.
show. The
What's
Vancouver
that?
Canucks have re-signed defenseman Philip Hronek.
Yes, yeah, for 7.4 million a year or something. Nuts.
Yeah, hang on a sec. Oh yeah, okay, that's better. That's better on my end. Having a little
Eight
bit of
years, 58 million. So that's seven, and then he's got 7.25 million for 8 years.
yep.
Crazy on
So, what do
average.
you think of this contract?
What does he do? Like what? I know he's a good defenseman, but let's get some perspective. I mean, that's big money and commitment. I'm going to get
Sorry,
some more
yeah,
details
I'm
here.
just getting it out here. It's 8 years worth 7.25
Two
million.
five. He's 26. Okay, so you're taking him into his early 30s. Okay, that's not bad. I like that idea. You don't want to go into late 30s with a defenseman, but he had basically a point every second game during the regular season, although he played a lot of power play. He had 48 points in 81 games, but he only added 2 points in 13 playoff games. Now, he was good in the playoffs. He played very well, but wow. Like for a guy that scores half a point a game, I don't see him in the same realm as a Josh Morrissey or even I don't know who else you could put in there. Wow. He
Well,
was making $4 million a year up until now, just over four. Wow.
but I would. What's the best way for me to say this? I liked this deal over the 9.25 that the Oilers are presently paying Darnell Nurse. I'll say that.
Well, Darnell, that's a whole different thing. I mean, there's lots of contracts after the fact you can look at and say that was a bad or wasn't, you know. It's always the question of do you pay for what is to come or what's already been accomplished? And if you in either one of those scenarios is risky because it's like when the Jets signed Wheeler to that 8-year, $8 million a year deal. He was playing really well. He was better than a point a game. You could argue he was one of the best right wingers in the NHL at that time in his early 30s or whatever. He was 30 years old or 29, 30. He was right up there in the top 10, 15 in scoring. He wasn't a huge goal scorer. He scored a lot on the power play, set up a lot of guys for goals, could pass really well, was big, good on the forecheck, good on the power play first unit. They signed him for $8 million at the time. Now, that was a good deal for the first 4 years of that deal. 5 years, you could argue even. The last 3 years, it was a it was a dog's breakfast because guys start to eventually father time catches up with anybody. But they signed him on what he was doing, and they signed him long term. Hronek, it's a little bit more of he's done okay. We're expecting him to do even better. He's averaged a point every second game or half a point a game in his career, roughly. He had a
So,
3-year deal
so
for four
base
million
that out.
dollars a year. He had a 3-year deal
Yeah.
for $4 million a year, roughly. Now he's getting um, 7.3. So he's more than doubled his salary. I don't know. But look at Nurse. What is Nurse? Nurse signed that big deal. They thought he was going to be something. He was going to be like a Seth Jones, and Seth Jones hasn't really played to his potential after
Yeah.
signing that huge deal. But they thought he was going to be. They honestly believed that uh, Darnell Nurse was going to be the next. Well, I don't know. Pick your guy. Maybe the next Victor Hedman
Roman Yossi and
or
those
Roman
types.
Yossi. There's another one, like anchor defenseman for your team, your number 1A pairing guy. He's not even playing on the top pairing for Edmonton right now because
Yeah.
when he was playing with CC, they were like a negative. That they were just minus. He's played
Yeah.
better in the finals than he did against Well, against LA, he was terrible. He was better against the Stars. He's been okay, not great, but in the Stanley Cup final. But what are you going to do? That's the problem, is that you sign these guys. You could sign them to these deals, but you can't get your money back once you sign them. They're all guaranteed contracts. It is what it is. That's the environment we play in. You can buy them out, but it's rolling the dice a lot of times. And if you don't want to sign a guy, if you don't sign him like to this thing 8 years at 7.25 for Hronek, he's a UFA. I believe he was he's scheduled.
And I mean, the bottom line is either you sign him or you watch somebody else sign him for that.
Or he was a restricted free agent in July, so they could have signed him like what the Jet signs do, sign him to a 1-year deal with the hopes of signing him next year. But then all that does is it brings him to UFA status, and then he says, you know what, I want to see what my options are in the UFA market. So that's why Vancouver does what they think is a smart thing, lock him up before he gets to UFA. So you got to pay him what he would get as a UFA in a year from now or 2 years from now. And 7.2 for him, maybe that's a good deal. Maybe in 2-3 years from now, the defenseman like him with his scoring and with his ability, maybe they're getting 9 or 10 million a year. I don't know. It's all speculation.
What?
Yeah.
What does this do with Vancouver? Like, how does their sort of cap logic change? Because now you get Hronek at a raise, you get Patterson at a raise. Like, to me, Patterson, Hronek, goalie Demko when healthy, that's kind of the core of their team. But it's like every general manager, Rick. You have your 6, your 8, your 8.5 million deals, and now you gotta find the guys around them to supplement them, like the Dakota Joshua, the Ilya Mateyev, just as an example.
Yeah. Listen, Hronek's a good player, but I just think it's the way that the NHL is now with UFA status and guaranteed contracts is if you don't, I think Vancouver thinks, and it's probably not silly thinking, if you don't sign him, like if you don't give him 8 years, he's going to say, I want 8 years, because if I go to UFA status in a year from now or 2 years from now, whatever it is, I don't think he's that far away. I think it's either 1 or 2 years away, maybe 2 years away. In a pair of years from now, I'm going to sign a 6 to 8 year deal with whoever I want.
Mm-hmm.
And so now what they say is, okay, so we get him now, we lock him up and we take him into UFA status into his early 30s. And we've got a solid top 4 guy, right-hand shooting defenseman, can play power play, penalty kill. He's big, he's tough, moves the puck well, got a good shot. He scores a point every second game. Okay, you got something there. Now they're hoping the salary cap goes up. You're right. But Hronek, I think it's the deal you got to sign, because if you don't sign him to that, he'll just say, okay, fine, I'll just play out my options. And in a year or 2 from now, I'm not going to sign with you. I'm going to go to UFA status. He, in essence, said to Vancouver, think of me as a UFA, and you're the only one that I'm a UFA, and you have the opportunity to sign me without having to compete with anybody else in a pair of years from now. Mm-hmm. And when you think of it that way, if you put it in that context, that's not a bad way to think, right? Because in a year or 2 from now, they're probably not in the same way to have him exclusively. And
right. And he probably has a good year, pushes them up to, the 9 million, the 10 million.
Potentially. Who knows what it's going to be in
a couple crazy. Years. It gives them cost certainty now.
Correct. And you've got to, that's what they all say. The agents all say it like this. And the players don't say it, but they think it. But the agents are the ones that say it, is that if you're going to sign me to a long-term deal as a restricted free agent 1 or 2 years before I get to UFA status, you better make it worth my while, because if I'm a 4-year or 5-year vet and I got to get 7 years before I get to UFA status, that's something. Like UFA is something to achieve. It's a lot of guys want to get there so that they can decide where they're going to play and for how much they're going to play for. And so if you say to a guy, I want to take you away from that, I don't want to I don't say I don't want to allow you, but I don't want you to think about that. I want to have you part of my group. So
Mm-hmm.
you are not even thinking about looking at what UFA looks like. You got to pony up. That's the way it is. And that's all the agents are going to say. Say, listen, he could get the UFA status in 2 years from now. If he signs an 8-year deal with you, he's saying, I'm not worried about UFA status, but you better pony up if you want him. So
Yeah.
for
Well,
every Vancouver that does something
it,
like that,
it,
there's like the Jets who don't do that. So
it's a screwed if you do, screwed if you don't scenario.
well, it depends. If Hronek stays healthy and if
Right.
the market still keeps going up and up, maybe
Right.
by the time he's 32, 33, maybe it's not a bad deal. I don't know. Like, but I like it better. If you're asking me, I like it way better now at 26 than I do signing him to that same deal at
Not
29
30.
or 30. Taking
Yeah.
him to 38, taking him to 34, that's not bad at all. I think he'll still be a pretty good serviceable defenseman at 34. And if you have to buy him out in the last year, so what? That's not a big deal. So
If you have to pull a Blake Wheeler, you have to pull a Blake Wheeler. It's the cost of doing business. Rob says Hirona signing means the end of the line for one of their other veteran defensemen.
yeah, who? They're not going to get rid of the big Russian. What's
Zadorov is a UFA.
Well, they're going to sign Zadorov. I'm pretty sure. Because if I had the choice between Zadorov or Myers, I'm keeping Zadorov. So
Yeah,
to me,
well, fair enough.
maybe the
Yeah,
Jets
no.
should pony up for Zadorov. He
Yeah.
looked pretty good with it in a Jet uniform. That's what we
Big-
need. More guys like that.
Big, mean, and nasty, right?
Yeah, but I don't think he wants. I shouldn't say. I don't know if he wants to play in Winnipeg. What are you gonna have to pay? If you're paying Hronek 7.25 for 8 years, what do you think you're gonna have to pay
Yeah.
as UFA? You're gonna have to pay Zadorov. How old is Zadorov? I think he's a little bit older. He could be 28, 29.
Yeah. Well, the Zadorov to me would start at eight and a half.
Yeah.
8.5. 8.5 million.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
anyway,
look
let's
at-
talk
look
about
Just wait. I just
Joy?
want to say another thing. Just on
Yeah.
another note, we're talking about signing. Look at
Yeah.
what the Rangers had to do with Barclay Goodrow.
I
They had
mean,
to waive
yeah.
him. And he's only making 3.6 or 7, but he's not a big scorer. He only got like 5-10 points during the regular season. You can't pay a guy on your fourth line or third or fourth line, even if he's a playoff guy and won a couple of championships. You're paying him almost $4 million guaranteed for another 3 years after this year. Like that. That's how you got to waive a guy like that. See, this is they sign these guys and then obviously, oh, this is not a good thing. Yeah, it's not a good thing.
Yeah, no, to me, the Barclay Goodrow thing is setting up to be he goes unclaimed and then they buy him out.
Yep. I think that's what, and then he'll test the waters and he'll sign somewhere. He's not that old. He's only 31.
No.
But then he'll sign like a $1 million deal, like a Sam Gagne or whatever.
Yeah.
And sign a deal with somebody, and then he's making the other money under his buyout. But yeah,
I mean, I think it goes to show, Rhett, that a player deteriorates is the wrong word because that's not the right word. But the player, as quick as he goes up in value, he goes down in value quicker. And I think this is an example of a scenario.
right.
Barclay Goodrow made money for what he did in Tampa. He was a cap casualty of what went on in Tampa. Got rewarded for good performance.
Yep.
Now, however, the Rangers feel the need to move on because they gave Tato Tata a new deal. Lafreniere needs a new deal. And they're going to sort of rearrange the deck chairs on Broadway.
Yep.
And Barclay Goodrow is just a casualty of that.
Yeah. It's inevitable. You sign him to that deal because I think they wanted to bring in some veteran leadership, a guy that's won somewhere else, bring a winning culture to New York City. I get it. I totally understand why you sign him to that deal for the 5 years at 3.6 million a year. But
Yeah.
then afterwards, if he's not scoring, he's not playing on your top two lines, even your third line. He was playing a lot of third line, sometimes fourth line. Like, man, you just can't pay guys almost $4 million a year to play, 10, 15 minutes a game. It just, because how are you going to pay the guys that are playing the power play and that are playing on the first and second line, right? So,
while we're on this discussion,
yeah,
is Blake Wheeler retiring in your mind?
I don't know. He only signed a 1-year deal with Rangers. I don't know that he finds a well, to use an analogy, I think the music stops playing, and I don't think there's a chair available for Blake Wheeler. I think he's done. And it's not to say that he doesn't want to play. I'm not to say even that he couldn't play.
Right.
I just, who's going to want him? Who's going to, like, for me,
especially coming off a significant injury that he had.
Yeah. And he's not going to play. He's not going to play on your first or second line. And he probably won't play on your third line. Maybe, maybe not. So a fourth liner, like Blake Wheeler, like, why don't you get
for a handful of teams?
I mean, he's good, but he's not a great defensive player. For me personally, for the fourth line, I'd either get some veteran who knows how to play defense, like a Barclay Goodrow, get him for $1 million. I'd sign him to after he gets bought out by the Rangers and have him on the fourth line at $1 million. Then Wheeler, or the other thing I think a lot of teams are going to do now is you could just see the NHL. It's getting younger and younger. It's they've got to bring in guys that are on entry-level contracts because you can't have all these veteran guys. I know sometimes the stars can align and you can get it like with the, like how the Lightning were a couple of years ago and how the Vegas Golden Knights were last year with, all these guys that sort of at the top end in their contracts. Then they have to shift them away. It's the same thing with the Panthers. The Panthers are right up against it too. They got a lot of those guys. A lot of those guys are going to have to leave after this year because they're just right up against the cap. But speaking of which, do the Jets sign Monahan? Yes or no?
No.
Really?
No, I don't. I don't think so.
Why doesn't he sign? Because he doesn't want to sign because they don't want to pay him what he wants, or they don't want the term, or what?
Yes. I think, to be honest, this comes down to cost over term for me.
He's the same age as Scheifele, I think, eh? He's 30, 31.
Yeah, but the issue becomes, like, I have no problem giving the guy $5 million if he wants it, but I have a real hard time 5 over 5.
Yeah, he's probably, I think he would want at least 5 years, eh? Probably. Like if he's 31, he's going to want at least 5 years.
Like if you told me, Mike, let's get the deal with Sean Monahan done at 5 over 5 million for 3 years, done. Yeah, I have a problem 5 over 5.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just think a lot of these guys, they don't want to sign shorter term deals into their early 30s. When they get to 30, 31, 29, they want to sign those 6-7 year deals that take them past 35, that take them.
And if you're the Jets, do you want to blot a Brad Lambert? Do you want to blot a Nikita Cheberkov? Right?
Yeah. Well, there's lots of guys. I personally think, I know we just got a comment here. Goodrow wouldn't look too bad in a Jets jersey. I agree. If you can get him for $1 million a year and get him to come here and play fourth line and sometimes third line to kill penalties, be a veteran guy, fantastic signing. But I agree with you, Michael. I think the Jets, I don't know if they want to go young, but I think they have to go young. I think they have to. I'm not saying it's a complete rebuild. I'm just saying it's a reset, but they need to change something. It's been the same for too long. They need to change. They need to get younger. They need to get a little bit hungrier. They need to get a little bit more grit, toughness, signing guys like Goodrow, signing a Zadorov, like these types of guys. That's what they need in their lineup. Yeah. Less softies and more tough. And that, I think that also means, I know there's talk about Ehlers getting traded. I like Nick Ehlers, but at $6.5 million for how he plays in the regular season, he gets roughly 0.75 points a game. He gets about 60 points if he's healthy for 80 games. So he gets 0.75 points per game. Is that worth $6.5 million and then goes invisible in the playoffs? I don't know. Maybe you could get something. He's valuable now. Maybe you could trade him somewhere and get something in return that gives you a little bit, that gives you some skill, but gives you some sandpaper, especially.
Here's the other thing too. Does he want to sign an extension in Winnipeg?
Wow. Or do the Jets want to sign him? That's the other question. Do they want to sign him for 6 more years at $7 or $8 million a year? Good question.
If the answer is no on both fronts or one front, then you've answered your question and you trade him. For me, with the Jets, they have a really, shall we say, interesting track record when it comes to development of defensemen. Trouba, they lost. Byfuglien, they lost. Myers, they lost. Sherratt, they lost.
Yep.
Really, the homegrown defenseman width that the Jets have in the last number of years, Morrissey.
Oh, and also Sherratt. Sherratt was their draft choice, was in their system.
Yeah, he was homegrown, but he wasn't there long term. You know what I mean?
Oh, he was there a pretty long term. He was there 7 years, 6-7 years in the lineup.
And then after that, he elected to walk, which
or the Jets didn't sign him. Michael, every team goes through that. You just have.
No, I'm saying that it's you need to have homegrown defensemen, but they suddenly stealth defensemen like Victor Hedman don't grow on trees either.
No. And you're not gonna. And I agree, you're not gonna get free agents, top UFA free agents to say, I want to sign in Winnipeg over Tampa Bay
Boston.
or over LA or wherever. I'm just saying it's a hard sell, Winnipeg. I get that. I love this town. It's my hometown. I love it. I love living here. If I was talented enough to have been a hockey player, for me, I have these dreams every once in a while. I have a dream that I played junior and got drafted by somebody else. And then when I became a UFA, I went to Winnipeg. And then the other one is I was under the radar. I was undrafted, got signed as an undrafted free agent by the Jets and played 15 years for the Jets. And they never left because I would have been there in like the middle to late 80s because I signed. The Jets never moved to Phoenix. That's my dream, that they never left. So, but anyway, I'm a hometown guy. I would love to play here, but I just don't think a lot of free agents are the same way. And so that's why, to your point, the Jets got to develop guys that they draft.
Let's talk about this. Can we agree that both Maurice along with Bowness didn't utilize Ehlers properly? Hill stated he wants Ehlers to stay in Winnipeg. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, but of course, Arneal's going to say that. I mean, he's not going to say, get him out of here. I don't think that. Right. But you know what? He needs to play. If you're asking me, sure, I'd want Nick Ehlers on my team. I agree. I think, can he be utilized better? Maybe. The problem is you got Kyle Connor on the left wing as your top. So you got to play him on the second line. Okay. Then you play the first and second line. You play them almost even for minutes. But you got to have, with Ehlers, you got to have two big cats who can skate playing with them. You got to have a big centerman, Sean Monahan, and you got to have some winger, not necessarily a sniper, but somebody that can fish out pucks and can get them to. I think the Jets are not going to pursue Tyler Toffoli. I've heard that through the grapevine. And I would agree with that. I mean, I'm not saying anything that nobody else noticed. Yeah, he scored a couple of nice goals, but you know what? He was a step behind in the playoffs. He was slow. I noticed how slow
the whole second line disappeared in the playoffs.
He can't skate, Tyler Toffoli. I think he's too slow for the NHL. He's good on the power play. You set him up when you got a man advantage, that's fine. But
here's what I'll say to this, and I think it's an interesting scenario. I don't think it's a case of Maurice and Bowness not utilizing Ehlers properly. I think Ehlers could not commit to play the style of game that the Jets wanted them to play.
Okay, but that style is not going to change under Scott Arniel.
It's not going to.
Right.
So the problem is you drafted too many of the same types of players. Ehlers, Connor, potentially Lambert, etc., etc. Smaller forwards. There needs to be a philosophical shift to the big, rough and tumble guys that can play in the playoffs and score goals in the regular season. It's interesting, right? Because, and Rich, I think you and I have talked about this. For the Jets, for me, for the Jets to get to where I think they should go and where they want to go, which is ultimately win a Stanley Cup, I don't see a scenario where both Ehlers and Connor are on the Jets. Just my 2 cents, but I don't see a team. Um, I don't see a team that has Nikolai Ehlers, and I don't see a team that has Kyle Connor on the same team if the Jets ultimately are get to where we want them to go.
You could argue they're somewhat the same player, a small, skilled, left shooting forward.
Yep.
And they fight. Now there's a debate over who's more valuable to trade versus to keep. In my opinion, they are in some ways
Well, see, and
very,
that's what Rob's alluded to in the next comment.
yeah.
KFC is better trade option than Ehlers is likely to get more back in a trade.
I don't know. I think you can get probably as much for either one in a trade. But I
But
agree with you. I
the
think
way the contracts are situated, though, one needs attention now versus the other one.
yeah. I think the Jets need to do something to change their makeup. Now you could keep Ehlers, that's fine, but then you got to go young. You got to get rid of some of the old wood on the team and bring up some young players and integrate some kids from the Moose and from college hockey and junior hockey into the lineup. You got to bring in
Every
someone.
other team does it. Why don't we?
Yeah, and I don't care. Oh, you got to develop them. Yeah, or you got to get somebody else in here. You got to bring in Gaudreau, bring in Zadorov. I don't care. The makeup of this team, we talked about it before.
Yeah.
The makeup as existing as it is currently constructed cannot win in the playoffs. It's
Yep.
been established. So why do the same experiment again for a whole year and do the same thing? And you look, who's winning? Who's in the finals? Edmonton's an X factor. Edmonton won because of high-end skill, and they finally started to play defense as a team.
And they got goaltending.
Florida, no superstars, grit, great goaltending, system, all defense first, hit, bang, bang, crash, smash, get into the playoffs, away we go. That's how you're going to win. And the Jets currently constructed are not that. They are too soft, in my opinion. But that's as a whole team. No, I'm not picking on any one player. I'm just saying as a whole. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. We did have some Jets news this week, actually yesterday, but they
Yeah.
hired Davis Payne and Dean Chenoff as assistant coaches
Yes.
to join Scott Arniel. You're for it. I have thoughts, but I want to hear what you have to say first.
Well, they both have a ton of experience. They're not new to coaching. They in their resume, they've had very good success in being coaching on like power play units and penalty killing units. So yeah, I think how do you pronounce, is it Chenoweth? Chenoweth
Chenoff.
or Chenoweth? He was more the penalty kill side, and his team did very well in the past. And Payne comes with more experience on the power play. So
Mm-hmm.
so you know what? It's good to have some veterans. Scott Arniel is new as a head coach. I think he needs some really good veteran guys around him. He's got Wayne Flaherty, and he's got the other guy that was the holdover. I forget his name. So these are two coaches that have a ton of experience. They coached in Carolina. One of them coached Carolina. One of them was with Ottawa and with Toronto. So it's good. I'm glad the Jets found some guys with experience. So, and if you're asking me what's one of the Jets have to be way better in killing penalties next year. They have to. You cannot be as great as you can be 5-on-5. And the Jets are one of the very best teams, if not the best team, playing 5-on-5 throughout the whole year, 82 games. But you cannot be the very best team in the league 5-on-5 and be one of the worst penalty killing and still expect to win games, especially in the playoffs. Their penalty killing was nowhere near good enough. It was bottom 7 or bottom 8. I don't know. It was in the bottom quarter, like in the bottom 20% or 25% of the league. Not good enough. And their power play was too sporadic, hit and miss. So their special teams got to go like 100 notches up in my mind. But so how about you?
Yeah.
Do you like the Flyers?
It's interesting, right? Because do you feel that if the Jets would have had a top 10 power play and a top 10 penalty kill, that we would be in first place over Dallas this year?
Yeah. I think Rick Bowness, if I'm not mistaken, he ran the analytics on it, and it said if the Jets were just not even in the top 10, but in the middle 10,
right,
in penalty killing and power play, it worked out to about a goal a game, positive or to the plus side, either way, either not letting a goal in or scoring one more goal. And it would end up being about 6 to 10 or 8 to 10 more points. And it would have been right there with us, not even one. Now, that doesn't mean won the first round or not. It just goes to show you can't have.
I'm having
Was that an
issues? Yeah. Sorry, I missed it entirely what you said about the screen froze.
That's okay. If the Jets cannot expect to win if they do not have a power play and a penalty kill that helps them win. Like you can't be in the bottom 7 or 8 teams of the league in penalty and kill and power play and be the best team in 5-on-5 and still expect to have success. It's just not possible. And
I mean, look at it. One of the things saving the Oilers right now is their penalty kill. They're 44 out of 45, give or take, in the last 45 attempts.
Yeah.
You need to have a good power play or a good penalty kill to have success.
Yep.
Just had neither.
I agree.
And that's what we are. So let's talk about the Stanley Cup final. Tonight is Game 5. Florida's up games to 1. Surprised how this is gone, Rich?
No. I expected Panthers to win. I still do. I should have picked them in 5, which is what I was on the fence for. And I still think now, after seeing it all, it's interesting. It's a very similar scenario to what happened with the Celtics. They go up 3-0. It's game 4 on the road. You just don't, you're tired. It's like, we got our split, blah, blah, blah. You just don't have the same mental sort of that killer instinct sometimes. And the other team comes back at it. Now, the Mavs, they didn't embarrass the Celtics at home the way that the Oilers embarrassed the Panthers, or the way that the Panthers embarrassed themselves. What was the final score? Was it 8-1 or 7-1?
8-1.
It was 8-1. Ay. So I'm just telling you, those Panthers, they got a lot of pride. There's a lot of veteran guys there. I think they're a little bit embarrassed. I think they're a little bit irked, as opposed to using another word. which is not a
Yep.
good word for
Yep.
radio.
That's right.
And yep. And I think personally, Florida is going to come out gangbusters tonight in that first period and is going to hit everything in a white and blue and orange jersey and is going to, yeah. And now, is it possible that Edmonton could win? Sure. But I just think the Panthers are going to play way better being at home and having the energy of their home crowd, having a couple of days off. I think Paul Maurice is going to say all the right things. And I think the Panthers finish it off tonight. That's my opinion. I could be wrong, but it'll be interesting if the Panthers do not win tonight and then it goes back to Edmonton and then the Panthers lose again. Oh my gosh. And then you come back to home, game 7 after winning 3 and losing 3. That would be an interesting game if it goes to game 7. But I don't think it's going to go there. I think the Panthers are going to bounce back. So
I'll say this. I think the pressure's on Florida tonight.
Really?
I really do, because Florida was expected to win this series. I think by most people, Florida, don't want to say dominated this sort of series so far, but the fact is, I don't think if you're Florida, you want to go back to Edmonton up 3-2 in that Hornets nest that was the other night. But by the same token, Rich, people say, yes, it's 3-1 Florida, blah, 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 blah. It is what it is.
Yep.
Oilers dominated in 1, lost. A 5-minute stretch in game 3, where it went from 1-1 to 4-1, cost the Oilers. Goaltending hasn't been good enough, granted, but I still feel like this series deserves to be at minimum 2-2, because
Really?
I think Bobrovsky bailed out the Panthers in game number 1, but that didn't happen. Oilers didn't win. I just totally feel that the pressure's on the Panthers tonight to win at home. The mathematics suggest in recent years, teams that have a chance to close out the Stanley Cup often miss on the first attempt. Vegas, etc., etc. It's got to be tonight for Florida before you start to have doubt creep in your head. The other thing I'll leave you with, Rick, since game number 4, end of 2 periods, the score is 10-1 in favor of the Oilers. There are 2 goals in game number 3, which got it to 4-3 and very, very close to being the tie game, but it wasn't. Ultimately, though, what I think is an issue for the Oilers is, you can agree or you can disagree, and we can have a discussion about this. Everything that I thought the Oilers would struggle with earlier on in the playoffs, and why I didn't even pick them to be here, is why they're losing this series. They're being muscled off the puck a little bit too easy. Their goaltending is being suspect. Matthew Tkachuk is running around. He's not scoring, but he's being enough of a problem that you gotta have your head on a swivel. Oiler defensemen are being punished for making an outlet pass. The Oilers flaws that I thought would cost them earlier in the playoffs, in my mind, are costing them now. And it seems to me like in the last couple of periods, the Oilers have found their footing, but it's a little bit too late.
Yeah, and it's one goalie can have a bad game. Listen, Florida, the way that they play is by being great defensively and by playing a team structure and playing defensively. And they got away from that early in the game, and then it gets out. It gets 4-1. I think it was, I don't know when they changed the goalie at 4-1 or 5-1. It was for sure 5-1.
Yeah, it was 5-1 when they changed the goalie.
5-1. So at 5-1, Paul Maurice says, "Okay, yeah, we're gonna mail it in." So they let Edmonton score 3 goals. It really doesn't matter whether Edmonton wins 8-1 or
Yeah.
2-1. It doesn't matter. Edmonton wins the game. But you know what matters is how does Florida eat that? If they lose 2-1, that's a tough one. And they're maybe a little bit brokenhearted, a little bit down, can be
Yep.
like that. You lose 8-1, you're basically saying we got embarrassed. We're ticked off. Did they run up the score? Maybe. It doesn't matter. Whatever you think, whatever
Yep.
rallying cry you're going to have.
Mm-hmm.
Teams don't, hockey players especially, do not like getting embarrassed. It's there. And I'm just saying, not that Edmonton rolled on him. That no, Edmonton just was
Right.
just playing. But I'm saying personally, you get beat 8-1. I tell you, that for me is motivation need for the game 3 nights later or 2 nights later.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
me. So I just think you're going to see a completely different team in the Panthers tonight.
And I think too, there's something to be said about the way you respond when your team's season is on the line. And the Oilers had no choice but to come out and, to use a UFC analogy, come out
Yep.
kicking and streaming and guns a blazing, and their season's on the line.
Yep.
Now I think you're going to see it kind of like a teeter-totter, where instead of it being slanted to one side, both teams are going to come out swinging tonight, and I think that's going to be a really, really dirty game tonight. And listen, I think this goes back to Alberta, and I think there might be a Game 7 here.
No, I don't believe that. It's possible. Anything's possible. I believe similar to what the Celtics did to the Mavericks.
Fair
Get
enough.
home, get behind your crowd, get re-energized, play your game, and be the better team. And I think that's what's going to happen. But
By the way, if
Could be
I'm a
wrong.
TV executive, I'm not overpaying for those NBA playoffs, which were very boring in my mind.
yeah, I know. I'm not talking. I'm not trying to compare.
Oh,
basketball
but
to hockey.
that's a
I'm
discussion
the
for
scenario.
another day.
Yeah,
The NHL playoffs are far more superior than the NBA playoffs, and I
no question. To
and
me,
I
they
will
are the
have
best
an argument with
playoffs in
anybody that
sports.
wants to have it.
They are the best playoffs in sports. There's not even a question. They are the best, the most compelling playoffs. in
Maybe
sports.
March Madness because of the one game element, but
Okay, well, I would say then the professional sports. They are the best.
okay, professional
playoffs.
sports, yeah,
Yeah, in professional sports. The
even baseball too, right?
NFL is pretty good. The Major League Baseball is pretty good, but I still think nothing compares to hockey. So, but that's me. Yep.
You got it right. All you need to do is you need to add a play in.
No, please don't. We talked about this. Please don't.
Yeah.
No.
Well.
No.
Okay, so
The
Red
regular
Team.
season should mean something. You shouldn't have more than half the teams in a league in the playoffs at the end.
Correct.
Not like the CFL. Everybody is in except Ottawa. Or no,
Okay.
I don't like
Well,
that.
this year that might be Winnipeg not getting an IAA,
Yeah, well,
but
in the what is it in that? Yeah, in the CFL, 66% of teams make the playoffs.
that's
That's
out of 9.
no, that's not good. 50% is my limit. It should be even less, but 50% I'm okay with. No more. That's
I mean,
not that I ever
I'd be fair with it if you just had a one round of playoffs, like your conference final, and then you're straight to the Grey Cup. Top 2 teams, be done with it.
Oh, like in the CFL, go from having 6 teams in to having 4 teams in. Okay.
That kind of fits with your logic.
Yeah. The
4
problem
out of
is
9,
that
5 out of 9. You're at halfway, right? For most leagues, but
the problem
Okay,
is how
Matt.
do you make the games compelling toward the end of the season if so many teams are out of it?
yeah.
Well, I guess every league has that
Well,
challenge. But yeah.
It depends on the year. So, Rich, you're filling in your Conn Smythe ballot tonight. Florida wins the cup. Who you taking?
Oh, to me, it's no question that it's a Bobrovsky. To me, I mean, that 8-1 get why only then 5 goals, but everyone kept listen. He played 20, how many games? Maybe not quite 20 games or else you're gonna have a bad game. Look at Hellebuck. He had a bad game every 20, every 15 or 20.
Yep,
You just have
fair
one, you
enough.
just have your game. But to me, I don't know that they are where they are with. I mean, it's team play. They've got a lot of good players. And that's the thing with Florida. They've got a lot of really good players, but they don't have, you could argue they don't have one superstar. Maybe Kachuk, but he hasn't played like a superstar.
Barkov?
Maybe Barkov, but he hasn't played like, he's played well. He's played very well. He's a shutdown centerman. He plays very well, plays in the first line, played very well, but he's not in that category, or he hasn't played like a McDavid or like you'd think of from other teams. But it's possible, even depending tonight. Like if the Panthers win 3-0, let's say this thing hypothetically, and it's a shutout for Bobrovsky, I think Bobrovsky wins it. Coming back from having lost 8-1 a few nights ago. If on the other hand they win 4-3 or 3-2, and Alexander,
he had an NHL record for a goaltender save percentage in the first 3 games of the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah, there you go. But I'm just saying, if Barkov comes back with maybe a goal and 2 assists now in this final game, and they win 4-3, maybe you could argue Alexander Barkov. I think he's really the only one. It's either, for me, for Florida, it's either Bobrovsky or it's Barkov. I can't really think of anybody. There's guys that have had moments. Verhaeghe's at moments been really good. Rodriguez at moments been very good. Eklund at moments very good, but nobody's, or Ekblad, not Eklund, Ekblad. But guys at moments, but nobody's really stood out except for me, Bobrovsky, and for Barkov. And for Edmonton, I don't know who I'd pick there. I'd probably pick Connor McDavid. I mean, he's had as many assists as anybody's had in a long time in the playoffs, so he's probably been their best. If they happen to now win 4 straight, it's probably going to be because of McDavid. So, but how about for you?
Yeah, I would agree. Here's my challenge, though: is the Conn Smythe Trophy for playoff MVP or Stanley Cup Final MVP? Like, what's the sort of criteria? And that's where I go back and forth between Barkov and Bobrovsky. I mean, Bobrovsky, he made a couple big saves in a couple games where, if he doesn't make it, who knows, it's going to a game 7, or Florida's not even where they are without him, particularly in the Boston series. And I just remember a time, Rich, and it was 2-3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago now. Bobrovsky in the playoffs. The guy can't get it done. Columbus, he can't get it done. First couple of years in Florida, he's not worth $10 million. Well, he's worth every penny of that $10 million contract right now. But anyway.
I agree. I mean, I'm not going to argue with you. I just think it's just the nature of being a goaltender. If you're a defensive team and you win the Stanley Cup, it's probably your goalie has a lot to do with it, right?
It's like in football, your quarterback has a lot to do with winning.
Yeah, well, and especially if you have none of your forwards really lighting it up the way like a McDavid does. Like, I don't think if Edmonton wins 4 straight, it's not going to be Stuart Skinner being a playoff MVP.
No,
but to answer your original question, it's the MVP for the whole playoffs. But I would say there's more weight provided to the Stanley Cup final, number 1, because it's the Stanley Cup final, number 2, because it's the most recent games being played. In my opinion, that's probably what happens. But is it fair or not? I don't know. Because you're right. You could argue the guy that played out of his mind in the first 2 rounds, that's the only reason that they got to the conference final to begin with, right? Whoever that is, whether that's a centerman or a defenseman or it's the goalie. So it's,
well, I mean, I have my thoughts and opinions, but
okay. So you think the Oilers are going to win tonight? I think the Panthers are going to win. Okay, so we got that settled.
No, to me, it's a cop-out to pick the goalie as your Conn Smythe MVP, just as much as it is to pick the quarterback to win the Grey Cup and the Super Bowl MVP.
Why is it a cop-out if he's your best player?
But he's the one that touches the ball 95 snaps out of the game, so
Yeah, but if he doesn't play well, then you're not
Uh,
going to win.
fair enough.
Yeah,
I
it's the
just
same
I
as the
didn't.
goalie. You're right. You're right. If a goalie plays lousy, then they say the team lost because of him. But if the goalie plays out of his mind and they win, well, then he probably has every right to win the Conn Smythe. So I don't
Fair
know.
enough. Rick, if we are here Monday previewing the game 7, what went wrong?
We're not here on Monday previewing a game 7. We're here on Monday doing a season wrap up and a talk about free agency and the draft. That's what we're doing. And who won the Stanley Cup final already. So which was
Well,
Florida.
I
So
think we know that answer based on the way
yeah.
the series is gone. But
Let's see how it goes. I'm just going one game at a time. In my mind, Florida plays way better and Edmonton tries to push back, but I just see it similar to what the Celtics did to the Mavs.
yep,
I just see it getting rejuvenated, playing at home, and having a chance to win it at home and carry the cup at home. All the guys in that dressing room are going to be talking about all the same things, including Paul Maurice. They're going to have a ton of effort. It's going to be a great game tonight, no
yep,
question.
yep,
It's going to be a great game.
yep. We'll leave it at that. We're out of time. Thank you for watching. Thank you for commenting. Thank you for those of you on my X account watching as well, Robin, all the comments. A couple other of you watching across the Game Time TV platform. We will see you next Monday night for either a Game 7 or to wrap up the season, look ahead to free agency. Rick, it's hard to believe we only have 2 more shows left. 2 weeks from now, we'll be talking about free agency and wrapping everything up for the summer. So,
Yeah, because we have to holiday too. We got to have a break. You can't just go hockey 24/7,
yeah,
364 like
no,
some
as much as we're in the meta of hockey, it comes a point where even I have enough. But we'll see. All right, for Rick Petty, I'm Mike Rodell saying thank you so much. We'll see you next Monday. Have a great week, everybody, and we'll talk to you then. Bye for now.